Morgan.
Okay, now it's working.
Morgan, Morgan.
Okay, yeah, it's basically. Hey, Yon, hey, Michael. Oh, look at
Let's
this,
go.
Adrian.
Adrian is
Morning, guys.
here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey,
Hey, morning.
Hello,
morning,
good
and
morning.
Ingi. Wow, cool. Good to see all you guys. Okay, so what's happening today is we will try, as I mentioned probably in our chat, so we'll try to bring back our workshops. We'll start from a workshop with Eyal, which was my mentor when I started to learn visual effects generally, quite some long time ago. Then he was compositor for till now, basically spent quite some time at ILM, technical lead at Veta. Now he's developing tools mostly, and I'm trying to bring him to Trickster all the time without success. One day I will. But today we will have probably the first lesson from in which we'll talk about the projections and the stuff. And now you're stepping in.
Thank you very much for that. That was very nice.
Thank you. Okay. Have fun.
Hope it's enough. I don't know. Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining in. I'm Eyal. The sound, the Rocky soundtrack. Should I turn it off?
Yes, that was
Okay,
our.
and there you go. Okay, so, and can you see my screen? Can you see the screen as well?
Oh no, shit! I forgot to share. Okay.
Oh.
Here.
Alexei, don't forget to record.
We're recording. Yes, yeah, we're recording. No,
This one?
well, that will do as well, I think.
Can you? Okay, they can tell me if they can see the screen or not.
Yep.
Can you see the screen? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So today, basically, we're talking to Alexei about what sort of class we can do. We talked about projections, and we said that projections are very wide. They've been using a lot of different techniques, from painting and stabilizing and doing some geo things, which is what I'm going to concentrate today. So it might be a series of things, and as I said, today I want to basically show you how you can basically do some things inside of Nuke, if I have some geo, contact shadows, reflection, stuff like that. I might leave it for later on, but we'll see. Also assume that some people feel very comfortable with projection and some are not. So first thing, I want to just highlight two key observations about those things. The first thing is basically that we have a very strong link between camera and projector. I remember the first time that I saw projector, I was very confused by that. I didn't know what it was good for at all. And I think the best things to think about those things is that basically the same things. Camera and projection are the same things. They both have lenses and sort of sensors. And a camera is basically observing light, and projection are emitting light. And the reason that I'm connecting between them is because of the second observation, is because projections, if I have basically this kind of like 2D plane, and I'm going to draw a line over here, and projection it basically on one axis would be to do something like that. And this is what's called a reduction of dimension or dimensionality. And I think this is a very important concept for us, because this is basically what we're going to do over here. We're going to have a 3D scene, and we are projecting it onto a 2D plane. So we are reducing it from 3D space into a 2D space. With projection, we're going to do the opposite as well. We're going to do some work on the 2D space, and then we're going to reproject it back on the 3D scene. And the reason we're doing that is because working on 2D space is a bit easier for us. So sometimes it's actually revealing something that are easier to do or only possible in that dimension. And that's basically the key idea all the time that we're doing with projection, almost all the time, from taking the camera, reducing it to the 2D textures, if it's displacement or whatever, doing some work, and then reprojecting it back onto a 3D scene for different reasons. So over here it could be some shadows maybe, or it could be a reflection over here or whatnot, and so on. Today I'll try to do mostly contact shadow or a basic fake contact shadow, and how it can be used to do different tricks, I guess, which is I think is slightly less explored territory, I think, but it's still very useful in some cases. So let's try to first of all mimic what we see over here, and I'll try to go over the things. And I know it's quite basic for some of you, but if you don't feel comfortable, I think it's good to start from that. So I put some elements over here. I have some sphere and cube and whatever, and I have a card over here on the floor. And the first step is I'm going to just put let's actually see the scene from here. Yeah. So this is my scene, and to mimic what we have, I'm going to put a camera over here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's these lines. And it's an orthographic view. which means basically there is no perspective element. Parallel lines are staying parallel. They will not converge anywhere. And this is important in this case. I will discuss about it later. And what I'm doing over here is, if you put it on 1 over here, the focal length, then the aperture would be aligned with the card size. So if I have a card that it's scaled to 10 units over here, and I can actually put it over here as a link, as I'm scaling the card, you can see the camera is also being scaled up. Which means now the camera is seeing what the card plane is seeing for us. And as I said, basically the camera is reducing it to 2D space. Plane is also 2D, even though it sits in 3D space. Our card is just a 2D basically because it's a plane. There is no Z. Yeah? Yeah? You good? Ah, okay. Okay, so far so good. I don't, yeah?
No, just a second.
Yeah?
Just a moment.
Go ahead.
Stop presenting, and then again present entire screen, because they don't see the pop-up windows. These ones now they see. Okay.
Okay. So as I said before, I'll just repeat it. If I have a camera over here and I put it on focal length of 1, basically, that means that basically all the units are now aligned to the units of Nuke over here. So 10 means if I have a card of 10 units or scale of 10 over here, it will be aligned. So a camera is basically now aligned. I put it on the same height as the card, and the scale is aligned. So it means if I'm going to look from the camera right now, I will see basically what the card is seeing, which is quite convenient. So if I'm going to put it as a texture on a card, I can actually see it like that. And this is kind of aligned to what we see before in the photos. So we have basically this kind of like concept that is repeating. And as you see over here, I just put it as a texture. I didn't even project anything. I just reduced it into the image basically, right? Put it as a card texture because they are aligned at the same size and the same position. And we basically see it from here. So we can see them, we can say reflecting or basically projecting on the ground. Is there any questions so far? I hope I'm not confusing anybody. No? Cool. And now to basically add this projection element, which we want to do if we have a bit more complex scenes, we'll see a bit later. Instead of putting it as a texture, I'm going to just plug in as a projection element. So again, as before, we have to look from the camera and then reproject it again from the same camera. So this is the linking thing between those two. I'll turn it on. And now we have basically this element over here and it's been projected. I just have a merge material. It's very, if you don't know it, it's very easy just because I have a diffuse and the element being projecting as an over, so I can see them together. And this of course opens the door to reflection and to shadow and stuff like that, which we're going to talk about today. I'm going to remove and just leave a sphere for us. And if I will just plug in the alpha, which I think I had before over here, it will just turn into a shadow. So if I'll just do something like that, let's see if I'm not going to ruin it completely. Yeah, it's going to be just a basic shadow. And of course it's aligned with the sphere, so if we're going to move something like that, we're still going to have the shadow from this position. This is a very basic concept. Now let's try to convert it into more of a context thing, context shadow. And to do that, instead of just looking at the alpha, what we see over here, which is just this guy, I think. Oh, sorry, like that. We're going to try to look at the depth position. And the depth is, in this case, instead of just using from 0 to 1, which what usually Nuke brings us, which is a reciprocal of depth, we're going to do 1 over the depth, and we're going to get it as a unit from the camera. And we want to use that. We can also use position wall, but this is a bit easier for us because it's come for free. And the units are important for us. We're going to see later on how we're going to link it to the camera as well when we need to. So if I'll just plug it like that, which I think I haven't prepared in advance. Let's see if we're going to see it. Yeah. So first of all, this is not the render of the sphere. This is the depth. And we can see it's actually going transparent in the middle. It's because as we are getting closer to the ground, clearly the distance from the sphere is close to 0. And as we are going far away from it, the values go high. That's why it's almost transparent here and more opaque over here. So I want to reverse it. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm just going to put a grade node over here, and I'm just going to reverse it. I'm going to reverse the 0 and the 1 over here, and it's negate the value. And I'm going to do that instead of just using a negate or inverse, because this can actually control our units. So if we're going to do maybe 2 over here, now the sphere, if I'm going to put it back inside, will still omit shadow even 2 units high. As you can see, this is 2 and then it's 3 going to disappear. So it started to give us this effect of like maybe kind of like occlusion thing that's react to that. I'm going to take it back on 1. We can also do half, and half would give us full. Oh, sorry, actually, I think in this case it should be 1 because this is the ground for 1. So this kind of give us a control. We can also do maybe some fall off with the gamma to give it more of a natural look as well because of that. And we can also add another effect of normals. And this is not fully correct for ambient occlusion, how much correct it could be. But if you look at the normals, which we can because it's negative, if you look at the numbers over here, it's negative. But if you look only on the y, basically it gives us values that everything that is being close over here to the center would be aligned to us. It means the value would be 1 or -1. -1 in our case. And as we are going away from the sphere, the normal is starting to go away, which will go to 0. So if I'm going to flip it over here as well with this guy, we'll get basically this kind of thing, which is just another tool to give us this kind of like fall off, natural fall off to the thing. And we're going to see it in more complex objects as well, how it actually helps us. So if we have now this kind of like depth inverse, we're going to have this normal as well to give kind of like more of a soft fall off. Shuffle it back inside. We're going to start getting this kind of like soft gradient thing inside of the sphere. And of course it's aligned to that. And yeah, so this is basically our for start. Any questions? No? Cool? Yes? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, a quick question. So the camera is on the floor, right?
Yes,
position-wise.
the camera is exactly on the same height. This is actually the next step that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, right now it's exactly where the card is.
Cool.
Yeah? Okay. And as Adrian just mentioned, the next step would be actually what if we have basically now the camera being not exactly on the line, which happens sometimes. Let's say I'm going to put it on -3 or whatever. It means because we're using the units of the depth, now the depth is not fully aligned because now the depth starts from this 0 here, and then when we reach here over here, there is like 3 values that we are missing. And we're going to see it over here as I'm going to avoid this one. Let's see if I haven't ruined anything while doing that. Oops, sorry. Okay, as you can see, this is on 0, the camera is on 0. And as I'm taking it down in Y, it disappears basically because now the units of depth are starting from here and not from. So it means now we're on 1 over here and not on 0. And now it's going to be on 2 and not on 0 and so on. So in order to just fix that, we're just going to add an add node over here and just link the Y over here. This will just shift our depth to the right place. So it means if I'm going to go now and change the depth, if I'm going to do another maybe viewer, let's see if it's going to work for me. Yeah. So if we're going to have another view over here, let's see. Yeah. I'm going to do it like that so we can see what we are viewing. This now doesn't change anything. This is always going to be a line, unless of course it's above it, and then it's basically above, below clipping area. But now it's going to be always linked. So now this is always, it's kind of like a starting point. What if happen if we don't have an even ground or whatnot? How are we going to deal with that? So if we don't have the camera in the right place, we just have to shift the value, shift the value. And that would give us this alignment thing. Cool? Cool.
Yep.
Can you go over again regarding the transformation
This part?
of the the expression?
Okay. This is just so what I'm doing because okay. So actually, let's look at the depth. I think it would make more sense. I'll add this one as well. No, come on. Okay. If I look at the values here without ignore this, I'm just looking at the depth right now. Okay, and it's being flipped and. At 0, you can see that basically now the units of the sphere from the camera are 0 over here as the closest part, right? Because the camera is very close to where we are over here. The camera is now really sitting below the sphere. It's a 0. It's a 0, right? Over here. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I'm more
just the expression.
The expression
Ah,
itself.
so I'm literally just control and just placing over here. There is nothing more than that. If I'm looking at the expression, it's just linking the transformation of the Y inside over here. Okay? Yeah, is that okay?
Again, this is not what I was. I wanted to
sorry.
know how do you translate the depth into the.
You mean over here? You mean
the first expression that
Sorry?
takes it converts it into.
You mean this guy, the flip one, the one that does this one?
No. Something is missing. I don't know. Maybe I'll try
Well,
and find out when we get the
I'll just do it
access
quickly.
to
I can
the
show you.
script itself. Never mind.
No, no, it's okay.
Don't.
It's okay. Just stop me where you are. So basically, we have. Let's look over here. So we have this is the depth, right? Just the units, nothing more than that. Then I have this grade node that flips the value. Actually, I think it's on the alpha. Yeah, it flips the value. Okay. So this is what we have right now. Then I'm doing this kind of like pre-multiply on the underground and the outside, everything that is 0. Then I have the normals that gives the next fall off, and then I'm just shuffling into the alpha with a black thing just to get this shadow. Is that
Okay, I
yeah?
was probably mistaken. I thought
Okay.
there's a conversion of the units before that,
Ah,
but
maybe this one, the one over Z.
yes.
Ah, okay.
So
So Nuke, a lot of there is a reason how rasterizing works, but most rasterizers always give what's called a reciprocal of depth. It means the value is going to come between 0 and 1. So they're not actually aligned, or not aligned, basically they're not correct to basically the units from the camera, like 1, 2, and whatnot, okay? So you want to reverse it, and it's just 1 over. That's it, 1 over something that's reciprocal. Reciprocal means that we're going to do an inverse of the number. So 1 over 2 is going to be half, which is the reciprocal of 2. So that's what we're doing over here, and that's converting it back to the units that we need. Is that making sense? And I'm also doing this thing over here. I'm also doing, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, maybe I can do it on a sticky note so you can see what it means. So that's the expression I think you may be asking me about. So first of all, I'm also checking if it's not 0. Because if it's 0, I'm going to divide it with 0, and then I'm going to have an infinity, which is going to create some more issues later on. So I'm going to just try to ignore that. I can also do this in one step, by the way, which you're going to see over here. Alexa asked me not to confuse it, but actually all of what this is doing is now compressed into one expression node, which is just the same thing over here. So I'm converting the data, I'm basically reversing it, giving it some range that I want to keep. I'm multiplying it with the alpha, so it's not going to be on the outside, no weird values, and then some normals, and that's all it's doing. So I'm going to leave it here, you can have a look, but that's what it is. Does that answer your question? Cool. Okay, so now we're going to add a bit of complexity, and what happens if we don't have an even ground? So the camera is not going to change it's not going to help us anyway. And we have this basically bouncing ball. I think I rendered this one already, I think with some occlusion. So we have something like that. And it's just a basic bouncing ball. But I think what's unique, unlike the other element before, is now we have an uneven ground. We have steps or stairs or whatever. So now camera is not going to help us. Now we're going to do something a bit more complex. We're going to add another extra element. And this one means that now we're going to use the units of the stairs itself to give us the pivot point of where the 0 is, where is the ground is. So the way we're going to do it again, we're going to have a sphere over here. So this is our sphere. I'm going to go to maybe this frame when it touches the ground. And if you're going to look only on the depth, we're going to have these units. It's going to be units from 2 from the camera, which we don't care about. It doesn't really matter anything for us because we need it to be 0. So to do that, we're going to look at the depth of the stairs itself, which is this one. Doesn't look like much, but if I'll do something like that from here, yeah, we can actually see the steps. We can see how the values decline as it's getting closer to the ground. So basically, this is the highest step over here. It's, as you can see, almost 2 units, and so on. So this could be a good pivot for us to use to tell where is the 0 ground for us from the other units. So all we have to do is just subtract one from the other, and then now we have basically this sphere giving us 0 where it touches the ground. So if I'm going to play it, you can see it goes up, and it reaches closer to the bouncing of the steps, it goes to 0. So does that step make sense to you? Cool. Okay.
Yep.
So using that, was that Alexa? Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna flip it again. I don't have to do anything special. It's exactly the same thing, and I'm gonna basically give it slightly less range of 4, just because I decided nothing special over here. As you can see, so I'm flipping the values like before, nothing special. I'm clipping the outside because it's 0. I'm adding this normal thing that we've done before, and I'm shuffling it back into the image, projecting it. Now we need to project. I can also use it as a texture in this case, but projection will just be more relevant for us later. So again, and this is what we're doing over here today anyway. So I'm projecting again from the same camera. Again, it's linking, it's the same concept. into our stairs, and when we look over here, we have basically this bouncing thing. So does that make sense? Awesome. So if I played it, and we'll have basically this bouncing thing, and as you can see over here, we have this kind of like, it falls from the angle that I'm projecting. There is nothing over here. Basically, it's just one line. So everything that will be over here will just be a full opaque thing. So we wanna fix it. So first of all, as I said before, now I'm compressing everything into one merge node. So don't be alarmed by that. If you want to see, you can look at what I've done. You don't have to. You can just use this technique. It's the same thing. And for Itamar sake, I will show. If you want to, of course. It's because I know it could be a bit confusing sometimes to see it. But I'm basically subtracting basically the A and the B, so my two input, and I'm maxing it, so I don't want to have any negative value because I just want to have the 0. And the dist over here is just a number that I decided on where I want it to start, to end basically. What is my range? And I have a reciprocal over here. Again, a reciprocal is 1 over, so 1 over 4 is 2.5, which just means basically it's going to put this 0 to 4.5 into 0 and 1. So now I'm basically taking this range and putting it between 0 and 1, ramping it, re-ramping it, I guess, maxing it again, so I want to ignore all the negative values into 0 and whatever goes above. Then I'm adding the normal element with a power, which is a gamma, basically. So I'm going to have this kind of like nice fall off. So all it's doing, and of course I'm checking for any, only if it's not 0. And that's all it's doing. I hope it makes sense to you. It's not necessary for you to understand. If you don't feel comfortable with that, it's fine as well. Put it over here. But the thing that I did over here is that I took from Blender also the UV of the stairs, which is basically the top stair and then every step of it, which is, of course, this guy. Oh, what have I done? Over here. So I have this guy, and just to compensate on the lines that get fucked over there, between basically everything that is normal on the other side, I just drew this kind of like steps where I wanted to basically ignore my projection. And I have a material over here, and it's just been stenciling everything from this projection. So if I would look from over here, I have this line, and now this guy is now omitting everything from that. So it's kind of like convenient to do it in one step in the scan. And you can also do it as just an alpha and clean it up later on, but it's just a bit easier, I guess, to do it in one step and ignoring it. If you want to see it looks like that, basically my alpha, and then I'm stenciling it, or I think also this could be sufficient as well. This is actually only what it will keep. This is an extra step that we're going to add just to fix a bit. We can also do the reverse of that, because we know when it's hidden in the sphere, we can also reproject it back on the sphere. So when we do that, I think it's this one. Is it this one? What have I ruined over here already? Let's see that I'm in the right space, yeah. Let's not do it like that. Of course I ruined something. Why wouldn't I? You guys have to just trust me that it worked. Alexis saw it, okay? But basically what we're doing is that we're taking this texture. I don't know what I've done over here, because last time I changed this node for some reason. I don't know why. I can see something become off. I don't know why. But basically we can take again this texture from the same spot and project it on our sphere. So now we'll get this basically black area back on the sphere. So it will give us this extra contact. Let's see if I can see it on 10 frame. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Ah, there it is. Ah, okay, it is working. Okay, sorry. There you go. So now we can add this kind of like bounce. It's the same texture from the ground, but now being projected on a sphere. And it's been occluded from the sphere as well, only what it sees from this angle. So it have this kind of like self occlusion mode. So it means now the camera, same setup, nothing changed, but now being projected on a sphere. And yeah, we have this just to extra kind of like touch for like this occlusion thing. And as it goes, it should work in the same way, because it's going from fully opaque into dark, and then we can have it slightly kind of like projecting. Now all of those things, and I thought maybe I could do it in different lesson if you guys want, can be also applied for reflection and shadow, or more complex things as well. And we can see it over here as well, how we can maybe have it reflect over here and so on. The last element, which is a bit of optimization on this sphere, is, as we talked before about the linking steps of camera and projection, which is the same thing, we're going into the middle step of taking basically a texture, 2D texture, which means that we are limited by that. If we look at the scan and render that does shadows as well, it's using a texture or a shadow map. So we cannot use just whatever we want, like 30K of shadow, if we wanted to have a really details. And in this case, when I'm rendering the sphere over here, we have a lot of depth space that we don't really need at all. So what we can do is, instead of actually using just the camera, we can make our camera a bit tighter. So this camera, I think it was this one, sorry, it's not this one. Where am I? Sorry, this one. Let's look from here. And this camera now is way tighter. It's more of the scale of the sphere, or very close to it. So it means over here, sorry, this guy, yeah. Now we're basically using way more for what we're paying for. So instead of just using this, by the way, is just 1K our texture all the time. I think over here I'm using half of it, and I have basically almost like 3 or 4 times bigger than the sphere from the other one, from the other setup. So it means I can actually use more resolution in less space. And just to compensate, we have to link a camera. So a camera needs to be linked to the sphere as it moves in space. So in this case, as our sphere moves, our camera also moves with it. It's being linked to it. It's only being linked in this case on the Z as it moves over here, but it can be on the X as well. Also on the Y, we can basically link whatever we want to this space. We just need to be thinking about where is the ground and how it's moving. So now, when we look over here, we get, it doesn't look like it changed, but actually if you look at the values of the expression of the distance, it does change. It just linked to it, and it's a sphere, so it doesn't look like it moves or change. And nothing changed over here. We get the same result. Put it back on the sphere, and we have this beautiful thing. Yeah, it works over here as well. Yeah, so that's like a small step of optimization that can help us later on. Any questions? No? Cool. Okay, so I just want to show, I'm going to add something later on, but first we're going to talk about displacement as well with that. And this is like from real case that I had. Sometimes Lidar doesn't come so clean up. And I had Lidars that came with holes in them. I mean, this is kind of like a very silly simplification of that. But I had cases that I had holes in them and I needed to fix that because I needed to project or find points or whatever. So I use this technique again, which is the same thing. We're gonna have a camera over here. And in this case, I'm just gonna look from an angle. It can be any angle that is important to you. It can actually, maybe the correct one would actually be something more from here, so I can see all the steps. And I'm gonna look from this angle. This is the camera that I'm using right now. It doesn't really matter at all. And it's very easy again, because we are reducing it back into 2D, to fill the holes. So you can use in Nuke 12 edge extent or whatever. Over here I'm just doing blur divide, which is very simple way to do it. It's not the most sophisticated way. So I have the holes over here. I think I should look at it, yeah, from the depth area. I'm fixing the hole and putting the original one back on top. So it's just filling the holes for us. Over here, shuffling it back, and I think actually I should put, yeah, something like that. And now basically it's a way for us to get kind of like a clean or a cleaner way to get the Lidar. Sorry, I think I jumped. Let's go back what I actually done. So to actually get it to work, first step we need to have a card, of course. Sorry, I didn't explain myself well in this case. Let's do it like that. I think I'm going to do it like that, yeah. So before we had the ground, which was basically just in the 0, and it was a card because it's just a 2D plane. So now we're kind of like going to work with the, instead of the camera going to be linked to the card, now we're going to go and reverse it. Now we're going to link the card to a camera. And in this case, we have a card, and I'm transforming it with the camera itself. So now it will sit exactly on the same position as a camera. Same rotation, same position. And a scale, as we said before, is linked to that. It's the same size. So now it means that we are basically aligned. Whatever the camera sees should fall exactly on this card, and vice versa. Okay? So I have a card, I'm transforming it, and I have those values before of the depth. So it means now all I have to use is now adding a depth element to it, basically to push the card. And I'm going to use a displacement. As a note, I'm going to use an alpha, not the luminance, an alpha, nothing here. And this is a minus because we're going to push it from the units of the depth. The depth is going to come from positive values from the camera. I want to push it in negative, no filtering as well. Displacement usually come like that. So just put it on -1. So we want to get it as a full unit, not just a tenth of that. And if I'm going to do something like that, now we get basically the stairs of what this camera is seeing from that. This is on 0 because Nuke sees there's a 0 on depth. It doesn't have anything. We can just tell it, if it's 0, just put 10 over here. So if I'm going to do something like that, and now basically it will push it behind it. So now everything that is 0 is just going to be pushed in the back. It doesn't really matter, you can do whatever you want. Or we can actually just shuffle the alpha itself inside, I think, if I've done it correctly. What am I missing? Anybody? Missing something? Card. Okay, I'm going to ignore it for now. But, you know what? Actually, I think it is there. I think it's just a tessellation again. If I'll cancel the 0. Yeah, okay. Exactly. Because I really pushed those values behind it, it got really, really stretched. And the alpha doesn't really align to the tessellation of the card. By the way, the card is kind of like very dense. It's kind of like have all this amount of polygon. We can add more for more accuracy or less or whatever you need. Yeah, so you can see it over here, but with an alpha it gets disappeared. And then we're going through the step of basically fixing up all the holes inside, which was over here. It was basically like that. Yeah, this is without fixing the holes over here. So you can see how basically it goes crazy. Fixing the holes, and I'm going to fix the holes in the alpha as well. And we get something like that. I felt like a bit skipped, but does it make sense to you what I've done over here? Yeah? Cool.
Yep.
This was a real case that I had with Lidar, but also I had a case that I had to clean up trees. I had basically a road and I had trees, and instead of going into Houdini and clean up properly, what you can do is basically just, again, film it from the top, this scene that I had, and then I can just go with the grade node or whatever with a rotor, eliminate all the high value of the trees that I have in the Lidar, reprojecting it again on just the card, and I got basically just the road without the trees. It was kind of like an easier way for me to work around it, instead of actually going back to Houdini or ask someone to fix it for you, which takes forever, as we know.
So the reason you're losing the sharpness of the geo in terms of the steps,
yeah,
there's a loss of sharpness. Is that because of the blur or because
no,
of
it's because of the density. So as you go high over here, like I'll try to do something like that, it will have more and more. Oh, now you see that's beautiful displacement nuke. Yeah, it will go being sharper and sharper. I think my nuke just died. Yeah, yeah. You see now this is sharper. This is not sharp because I'm just doing a very simple blur. If we use the new from 12 edge extend, it's doing something slightly else, which is, I guess, would be more accurate. There is a way to do it better than what I'm doing right now. This is just a simple blur divide. If you build it more in an exponential way, it will be better. You can do a lot of things, but it was just to demonstrate how it would look like as a concept. Yeah, I'm not fully sure what's going on. This is from the blur, like the blur shapes. I'm not fully sure why it's give us these weird things. I don't really care right now. It's okay. Yeah, and this is again just to prove of a concept that you can do it as well and use that. Yeah, in real case, I would go and clean it up properly. That's the thing. I would go and like do proper like colors or whatever to fix that. Does it make sense? Like this is what you, yeah. So now we're going to try to combine those things together into more of a complex shape. So I have this main element over here, which I haven't brought. Yeah, I have this robot lady over here. Is it a lady? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a lady. And she's just going up the stairs. So we're going to try to do the same thing as we've done before. We have this uneven ground, and we have something that is not a sphere. So nothing special. We're just going to combine everything together. So first step, we have this is the lady. So this is the character, and this is the stairs. And over here, we're going to have this projection thing. So we're going to have this kind of like shadow, whatever you want to call it, height map, depth map, whatever. Same thing as before. We're going to have this, and this is what we see from this angle of the ground. It's not linking in this. I think it's not linking in this case. Oh, it is linking. Yeah. I think to actually align to it, just to save again more space, the camera is moving with her. I just did a very simple animation thing on the camera, 2 keyframes, just to get more of the texture. This is what we see if we subtract them both. So we had again this character from this angle, which is probably like that. We have the steps of that, which looks like that. And with subtracting, we get 0 where the ground is. Clamping it from negative value, flipping it, sorry, it's on the alpha, flipping it to get only the ground, and then I can control how much I want to see from that. It can be very kind of like low. Clamping everything is basically outside of the character, which we don't care about. Using the normals, now we can see how it actually can help us to get something that is more a bit refined from that than just not on a sphere and not just basically clamping the value. So I'm looking at the normals, which are negative over here, so it's a bit confusing. Flipping them, we get basically, it's kind of like thinking how the lights are just basically emitting from below, which is kind of like the effect of what we want. Multiplying it again with that, we get this kind of like softness. And in this case, actually, let me turn this one off first, and this. Stenciling the stairs, that we don't want to have this ugliness between the normals that are facing away from us. And we get just the character. I think it's supposed to be with this one or with this one. Yeah, this one. Okay, so now we have this character steps over here. And we have this very basic kind of like contact element that we can use now. And what we can do is just, in this case, I just added some exponential glow. And I did it because I want to have this kind of like softness of what if it was a contact kind of like ambient occlusion. So playing with those values, which I haven't, I think, can give us kind of like different effect of how much we want to have this occlude on the ground over here. I'm going to add this one over here. Yeah. So we can basically go and play with this guy and see how much we, yeah, of course, this is very big values, and play with it and see how we can get this kind of like very basic contact. We do the same thing, by the way, as projecting it back on her leg, like with the sphere, and get some contact. So all of this makes sense. It's kind of like wrapping up all of what we've done up until now with the sphere, but now on a real model if we have it. So makes sense, right? So on a real world case that I've done basically is that I had a character that walked on paint. So it means I had to keep some paint on the ground sticking to it after it walks. You can also have it maybe if a character is walking on a beach or whatnot. So we need to keep the steps over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to render these results, which I think I've done over here, yeah. So this is the same thing as before, nothing special. And I have the setup over here of these steps of the ground over here that she's walking. And as you can see, she's walking from this angle. I render it outside, which is, I think, contact. Yeah, it's this one. And I'm just using time echo, this one over here, just to look at all the frames together from the end. So basically now I have this guy. So now as I'm going through the steps, now every step is being kept for us. And when I'm looking from this result, so I have this contact echo thing. And when I'm looking from this result, now basically I have this thing that you can see from here. And now she's basically keeping on tracks on that. And we can do now more complex things on that. We can do some different textures maybe of the paint, or maybe some interaction, and maybe it moves a bit after that, or whatever. We can do it a bit more complex, but this is just as a basic texture that we can use. So we had a 3D scene, reduced into 2D textures, did some work, echo work, whatever. Maybe some fluid simulation on that. Maybe it keeps on moving, I don't know, grows. Put it back on the geo, and we have this contact. I'm going to add another step to the mix, which I think is, I don't know what I've done over here. Let me just think for a second. Ah, yeah, okay. I want to talk about this thing. I don't know if maybe if we have time in the end, I'll talk about this technique, but it's not important for now. So this is just doing what this guy is doing, but it allows me to do more nodes in between. So this is just a feedback loop. And this allows me to do something that basically looks like that. So it means it's not only going to echo and keep the frames of before, it's also going to have this kind of like fall off of blur. So maybe it's like on a muddy sand or whatever. So as she steps, it's a bit like anticipating, kind of like falls off a bit and kind of like disappearing. So maybe if you have time, I'm going to talk about it, but just take it for what it is. Okay, it's just another step for the time echo. And to look from over here, now we're going to have this. Is it already rendered? Yeah, it's already rendered. So yeah. So again, if it was maybe on a muddy sand or whatnot, we can do something like that. And we can do a lot of things with that, of different textures. But we can also use this texture to drive the floor. So now we are going into an extra element. So up until here we did only textures, sorry, up until here we only did some textures from one to the other. Over here we added the element of actually pushing things with this texture, which is just displacement. Now over here we're gonna basically combine it again together. So we have a texture of the ground hitting, but we can also displace the ground from where she's walking. Maybe it was a snowy day, or again the sand, or whatever. It's just a very simple idea. So I'll first show how it looks like. It's a very, again, just it's very crude thing. So I mean, it doesn't look like the real thing, but it's just an idea. So as she's walking, there is this splash thing over here, and we can, I don't know how much you can see it on this render, but it's kind of also have this kind of like small thing that kind of like as the ground. So let's break it down a bit and see how they're all being combined together. We have this texture from before, the context thing. I'm doing this basically echo thing of time. And over here I'm doing, I think it's this one, yeah. I'm doing I'm just, is it this one? Yeah. I'm doing this kind of like low thing as before. So it will have this kind of like a bit kind of like fall off on the ground. And I'm taking the invert of that, of the original texture, and multiplying. So I'll just get the whole, so it will be kind of like nothing, up, nothing, right? As she's pushing the sand or the snow outside of it. And just make it a bit stronger. This is only to give me kind of like, I'm just playing with it. It's just, it's the way you want to, how you feel about it. And I have this rotor shape over here just to keep it away from the stairs, because this is a specific thing. Maybe in the real world I will do something more complex, but again, just to expand the idea of that. So it will be negative over here. And this time offset is just because I thought it would be nicer to have it one frame after she's stepping, so it will just stop after. Again, decisions. And then in this case, by the way, in this case I had to use UV project, but it's only because I already rendered those texture with an old stairs, and I have the new stairs. Ignore it. We can use the original one as well. It should work. And I'm displacing the ground. Let's see it over here. Yeah. So now this guy is now giving us the ground being displaced. I have these stairs over here that it's been already subdivided and tessellated. And this will kind of like give us this control over the ground when she's stepping. So if we look from here, yeah, we have this. I have two stairs over here. Let me do it like that. Yeah. And then I can play with it. So as I said before, I can go and maybe do just maybe just one of them. I think was maybe this one. Yeah, it's more maybe more like harsh or more soft. It's up to you. Again, those things are kind of like very crude the way I'm doing it over here. Just a proof of concept of what you can do with that. And I'm adding again the texture of the steps over here. So I'll just have a bit of kind of like, again, maybe it's snow or whatever. It's a bit kind of like fading off a bit. And I'm adding the diffuse. So I'm kind of like blending it all together. You can see actually over here on those results, it is a bit black at the start and then kind of like getting softer a bit as we go on because of this blurriness that we've seen before. And this combines all of this idea together with the displacement and with the texture all together to put it into one thing. Yeah, so this is roughly what it is. Question, remarks, whatever. Now it's the time.
Super
I have
cool.
question when you're leaving the tracks, is your camera linked as well to her movement? Because we need to keep all the texture all the
No,
time.
yeah, you're right.
Or
No, in this case, no, it's not linked because, we, as you said,
yeah,
I mean, we can also break it into different cameras if you want to keep more, because I could have been smarter and instead of actually using this texture, just use this kind of texture, which is half of that, right? I can just do like 1K over half a K. But yeah, we need to have the entire thing for that.
okay. Yeah.
That's why I need to do, I think, the UV project over here because I switched between different geos midway because I had this white geo and then I did like multi-threaded kind of like geo, which is, where is it? Is it this geo? Yeah, this geo, which is have slightly different UVs and it's mostly divided. So I had to kind of like shift between them because it was rendered from a different one. And then we can use it for that. Yeah, this is actually aligned to this texture, not to this. This is not relevant for us. It's for that, if I'm not mistaken. And it's this subdivided, yeah. Anything else? No? Cool? Quietness?
I found the fixing of the lidar actually is very helpful. We have every project issue that we as supervisors need to run after modeling department to provide us projection geometries from the lidar, and it takes them like 1 week to build or 2 weeks or 3 weeks while we need to project already. And I'm kind of like don't like when people projecting on the lidar because it's heavy, but it looks like it's a very good way to simplify the lidar generally, just to take a card, create whatever you did there in lower resolution even, and then render this as a OBJ,
I
and
think
that's going to be way
in a
faster.
lot of cases you don't really need the full lidar anyway. You need like usually a section of it for something, so that it's
Yeah,
even
yeah.
better to just crop it into whatever it is that you need and do that. I had a real case. That's from a real case I had. I told Alexa before. I had a scene of like a very massive set that they had, and it was very big with a lot of holes, and I need to use it for the ground. So that really helped me to do it properly, and clean everything that I needed, and I have it lighter as well for that. So it was, and they didn't have the right department to actually clean up properly for me, as usually happens, because we have to wait for things. So it just to try to solve their own problems. If there is no confusion or question, I can show you the feedback loop. But is there no question? Everything is clear and makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, was there No. Okay.
It's
Maybe
where
just my
it's
arm.
where you.
Okay.
I have a
It
question.
was feedback loop on the mic. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, that was yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Perfect for that.
I have a question. If I think the one of the very important parts that you reiterated this twice, but I think the most important thing here is the linking of the card to the camera,
Yeah.
because without that, like, and this is something that is extremely important. Otherwise, that's all, like, not all that, but it's actually, it makes everything mathematically kind of like very easy to handle when you position camera exactly where the card is, or the card exactly where the camera with all the units. And so I think that's the extremely important for everyone to understand.
I think that's the reason that I wanted to highlight in the beginning, and maybe it didn't make much sense, or maybe it was obvious. I don't know. The linking of the camera and projector, as they are the same thing, and basically what we're using as a ground to project it. So basically, they all have to think as one unit. So one is being reduced dimension into this kind of like thing, doing something, putting it back. So it's kind of like this coming as a one unit, and not just we're just projecting, or we're just putting the camera, or just putting the card. They all come in as one unit, and they're connected to one another to actually make it work properly. And that's why I want to show it over here. By the way, it's also true in this example. I could have also projected over here on this one, on this wall, and those elements are important. They're like the card. So it's also a question of how we're projecting. Also, we can project from different angles as well and get maybe this line over here. So again, those things like are linked together. They are coming as one unit, and I think for me that's what confused me in the beginning when I did in Flame years ago. I was a bit confused with that in the beginning, and I think when you link those concepts together, it kind of makes more sense as one unit and not just as a projector.
One little thing. What would change? Because all of these cameras, you're always projecting from an orthographic view. What would change if you switched it to perspective? Like, how would the look change, or would it even work? It would just
Yeah. In some cases,
widen.
so it really depends what you're trying to do, because I wanted also to show about, I wanted to also class about shadows, and now we can do like more complex shadows as well, and reflection. And in that case, I would use perspective, because we are mimicking the perspective. Because the light is basically also like, can be like, think of in a very simplistic and analytic way as a camera. So there will be this perspective shift of that, and it will be correct. And that also reflection is basically like we had a camera in the other world looking at us. So it's kind of like, in this case, I would use perspective. In displacement world, I would use orthographic. If you don't use that, it will get it distorted, and that's the thing.
Yeah. Okay.
The units are kind of like shifting between that, so this kind of like allows me to kind of like get the right units, and I think that's the reason I started. And also with the contact shadow, I wanted to have something that is not getting distorted. It's kind of like really aligned for that. It doesn't get anything that goes, because if I would do it, maybe we'll get some geo that comes from different angles into that, and I want to have it as it would look exactly like that.
Yeah. Okay.
As a very basic radiosity, which is how you do back in the day ambient occlusion, you could think of it as like heavy polygon have its own camera basically in an orthographic way, on the scene, and that would kind of like give us the value of this polygon to make sense. So it's kind of coming from that, this notion, if it makes sense.
Sure.
Cool.
Thanks.
If you could, last thing, import a normal default camera and convert it to the
Orthographic?
photographic
Orthographic, yes.
camera that you did, just so we can follow the
Yeah,
actual
sure.
step set, because
So a new camera over here, I'm going to over here, and I'm going to put it over here from perspective into orthographic. So it's this one. And I would always go and just put one on all of them. And a lot of the time I would put this one on 0 as well, because as you see, my ground was in 0. And if I think this camera as well, if I wouldn't put it on 0, would have clipping things. And it will also, it would not change the depth, but it will have these clipping things. So I will put it on 0. Now we have this something that actually starts exactly from where the card or the ground or whatever it is you need to do. And then I would go and play with those values as a scale element to do that, And Nuke doesn't care about vertical aperture. So in order to control it, you have to just give it the right, so if I put it over here, you have to give it the right format. So if I'll just copy this one over here, I'll put this camera, the new camera that we're using. And we have maybe this element over here. I'll put it in the same way. I'll put it like looking up, doesn't have to look up. And if I want it to be maybe half of that over here, right? So in this case, she's walking on the steps like that. We don't need all the other things. I can just go and in the format, you see it's still 1K, doesn't care about it. It only cares about this guy, the horizontal anyway. So over here, we'll just do it on this one half. And then we basically get this right result. Okay, does it make sense or not confused?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, it will always give you the wider one, actually.
Yeah, we can also do it over here. I can see now I'm basically cropping that. So all it cares about this guy over here, and this guy is just to see it in the 3Dness, like to see how it looks on the right value. Like now maybe I would actually do it half of that just to be aligned with the texture, so I know exactly what I'm seeing as well. So I can go and do something maybe like that, just to see what I'm seeing in the scene. And then I would do that. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. Cards being scaled up and down, still aligned to the camera, and my texture is actually being halved. Perfect. We gain a bit more memory. Anything else? No, Adrian, is everything make sense to you?
Yeah, it's good. I want to see the feedback loop.
You want to see the feedback loop. Nothing special about it, because Adrian have this really cool blink thing that does something very similar. But yeah, this is. I told Alexa this could be like its own class as well. You can also do like simulation with
I would
this.
say let's not start now.
Okay.
Because we're 3 minutes and people need to start to leave to their places. And I think we could do it next time and without rushing forward. I'll just mention that since this one is open workshop, we'll save the script and also the recording. We'll leave it in our WhatsApp group, so you will be able to access it from my Dropbox, and you will be able to play with this by yourself because of course you need to kind of like actually put your hands on stuff to understand that. And I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you all for.
Thank you.
Allow me to bore you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Eyal,